We begin with the latest on a new bombshell report which estimates that 330,000 children here in France have been sexually abused over the past 70 years. This at the hands of some 3,000 priests and others involved in the Catholic Church. Well, the report goes on to say that over the decades, the Catholic authorities had systematically covered up the issue. France 24's Yuka Roya has more now on these shocking revelations, the latest to shake the Vatican.
Some 3,000 perpetrators, more than 250,000 victims. For decades, the Catholic Church in France has provided fertile ground for child sex abuse by turning a blind eye or sometimes knowingly putting children in touch with predators.
Above all, there was a series of neglects, failures, silence, and an institutional cover-up. The Church did not know how to see, it did not know how to hear.
Sauvé said that the Church's indifference only started to really change around 2015. The damning report is the result of 2.5 years of independent investigation, based on testimony from thousands of victims who broke their silence. It estimates that about 216,000 people have suffered abuse at the hands of priests, monks and nuns. The number goes up to 330,000 if cases committed by volunteers and other church members are included. The figures only apply to people who are now over 18 and are still alive. The inquiry found that most abuses occurred between 1950 and 1970. Then their numbers declined, before they started picking up again in the early 90s. The vast majority of victims were pre-adolescent boys, trapped in the culture of penance and confidentiality.
There were massive crimes and atrocious offenses. But there was also worse than that. There was betrayal. A betrayal of the innocence of your own people.
The Commission also issued 45 recommendations, including compensating victims and revising canon law.
Meanwhile, the head of France's Catholic Bishops' Conference is asking for forgiveness from those victims of child sex abuse, which, as we've been saying, are estimated to number around 330,000 over a period of 7 decades. Well, the president of the Conference of Bishops says that he is appalled at the conclusions of that report and the numbers of the victims.
Our commitment is that when a victim speaks, he is heard and taken seriously, and that there is some action in response. I think we've made good progress in this vein, and we will continue to do this. Once again, I call on all the institutions to do this, because it's a problem facing humanity.
This church and Monseigneur Moulin-Beaufort has never stopped receiving reports of this kind. A victims group was formed, but also many victims have come forward over the years and nothing was done. Monseigneur Beaufort talks about the pervasiveness of sexual violence in society, and how strange he's saying this now when it's been going on for so long.
Okay, well, let's get some more analysis now, and we can speak to Dutch journalist and theologian Hendro Monsterman. Thank you so much for joining us. You're based in the Vatican. I mean, this report is shocking. And, you know, this France case isn't isolated. This is a truly global problem for the Vatican. I'm just wondering how this latest bombshell report is being digested there.
Yeah, well, you're right. I mean, for the Vatican, this is not new. The Vatican, they know that these problems exist. Other countries preceded France. You know, we all know the reports from Ireland, from Australia, from the Netherlands, from Belgium, Germany, United States. All these reports went in the same direction. But the French gave it to an independent commission, and this commission could also use the former reports to go further. They did an enormous work on social and historical studies that had not been done by the other commissions like this before. So what the Vatican has as a problem is not that they are not aware. The Vatican, the biggest problem of the Vatican is that many bishops worldwide are not able or are not willing to see the problem. France is the first Latin country in Europe where this commission, a commission of this kind, an independent commission, is doing this kind of work. But countries like Italy, Spain, Portugal, or whatever countries that have a Catholic majority, Poland also, they never did this kind of investigation. So there's a lot of work to do, even in Europe, and I don't even talk about countries in Africa, Asia, Latin America, where all these problems are still hidden by bishops, or where bishops don't want to see the reality of these problems. And France is doing a real good job here and helps other countries to follow.
Yeah, I mean, cover-ups have come up in this report as being, one of the most shameful aspects of it. The fact that people glossed over this and didn't listen to the victims. And I'm wondering if there have been cover-ups here in France. I mean, perhaps that's happened in the Vatican as well. And I'm wondering if perhaps that's hampered progress on addressing this global issue. Do you get the sense that the Pope is fighting perhaps within his own ranks to get the truth out?
So what this commission found out, that, and they said it also at the press conference this morning in Paris, that the changes that Pope Francis made in the church law, and it will be effective very soon in the next weeks, these changes are really welcomed with a lot of joy. The president of the commission talked about joy when he talked about these changes. But this is not enough. There is still a structural problem in the Catholic Church, in the Catholic culture, that even goes into the Catholic theology. The president of the French Bishops' Conference said today, and this is big. I mean, he said literally, we have to review our theology of the priesthood. There is something wrong with the Catholic theology of the priesthood, where the priest is so sacralized, so distant, so representing God, that it makes it possible for a priest to have so much pressure, give so much pressure on a victim to abuse him. So there's really something structurally wrong that and the universal church has to be addressed. And this Pope Francis has to do, and it's true that he does a lot, but it's not yet enough.
Yeah, I mean, that's a huge deal. I mean, the theology of the priesthood goes right to the core of what a priest is and what their role is. I mean, do you see major changes being made? Do you see this report changing perhaps the role of priests?
Yeah, it will. It clearly will. And this is also this is the vision of Pope Francis. What Pope Francis calls clericalism means that there is inside the Catholic Church, there are two castes. There's the caste of the priest and the caste of the lay people. And the caste of the priest, of course, is the upper caste that is dominating the lower caste. So this is typically a Catholic vision of the Church that has been developed from the 11th century on. Yeah. So what Pope Francis is doing, his whole pontificate is changing the view of the Catholic Church and giving lay people more things to say. And this is exactly what this commission told the French bishop to do. It is not possible anymore that the bishop has so much power. When a bishop welcomes a victim, he is a father of his priest, he has responsibility for this victim, he is judge, and he is also a party. This cannot be done anymore. We have to review the place of the bishop. And so that means also that when the bishop has to make a decision, he should be controlled by lay people. He should inform lay people, and he should even let lay people, men and women, be part of this process of taking decisions. And this is exactly the church vision of Pope Francis.
Yeah, I mean, popes, like Pope Francis, do tend to be quite old men. And, this is a very uncomfortable topic. It's a topic no one really wants to talk about. But do you think perhaps there's been a tendency over the years that, given that it's uncomfortable, people don't like talking about this, they just sort of hope it will go away? I mean, that's clearly not a solution. But do you think that's been part of the problem?
It has been part of the problem, and it is still part of the problem. Why did the French Church give this commission the task to do independent research? It is only because victims spoke out. Victims organized themselves. Victims put themselves in an association. Journalists did their job, and this is the only thing that will work. The Church as an institution will never do it from its own. So, and this is France is doing the job now, but when will this happen to Italy? When will this happen to Spain? When will this come to Portugal? There are so many countries today over the world where victims are not believed, where the priest has such an impact on the social life, where victims are twice victimized, because they are abused, but second, they are not believed. Yeah? And so this is a real culture that has to change in the Catholic Church worldwide. And the causes are structural. And this is what this report really shows. This is not an incident. This is not only sin. These are structural problems that have to be addressed on a global level by the whole Catholic Church.
Yeah, and just lastly, and we're nearly out of time, but I mean, the consequences of getting this wrong are huge, aren't they? Because the Vatican and the Catholic Church will find itself in a position that it's simply never able to rebuild trust with society.
So this is one of the biggest. I think this is some people already call this the new Reformation. You know, in the 16th century, the Reformation, there was so much wrong in the Catholic Church, in the Western Church, that Protestantism rose and that there was a schism. Yeah? The crisis we have now is as big as the crisis Catholic Church had in the 16th century. Yeah? And it is really, as you say, about rebuilding trust. And you cannot rebuild trust if you don't put everything on the table, if you don't ask independent commissions to do their job and to listen to all these recommendations that it gives. This commission gave 45 recommendations to the Bishops' Conference, and it also went until they also went until giving recommendations about, for example, the confession, the secret of confession. The secret of confession probably will have to change in this issue. So all these 45 recommendations will be really have to taken into account to have a credible church that will be able to live in this 21st century.